And I started with this track, I started with the atmosphere, and basically built the chords around it. So I started with that, and then I wrote in these chords around that atmosphere. My original plan was to re-record this sound, but I quite liked the kind of the organ sound that comes through in the track, and unfortunately I could not get a organ to record it, so I just kept these sounds in, and I think it works pretty well with Abby's voice. But my first step in creating it was obviously the atmosphere, and then I moved on to the chords. But like in all of the other tracks, I made it around this Amen break, so I put the original Amen break in the track here. Or a variation of the Amen break, and just chopped it up a little bit just to so I could know where the drop was, etc. And yeah, so I'll work through sections like I did with the other track. So at the beginning of the track, all I have is the atmosphere kind of creating an ominous sound, and then I've got a lot of different plucky sounds that come in here. They're all sounds like off Logic. My original plan was to record the acoustic guitar in, but unfortunately I just didn't get the time to record it. But also I think the fact that it's written in makes it sound less human, and that's kind of what I was going for. Even with the kind of more human-y tracks like this one, I wanted to still have the aspects of written in samples, etc. So anyway, I had these plugs that I put in. This too. Need to feel your touch. Won't somebody save me? So that was the bass essentially, and my next stage essentially, like the track was very, very bare without any vocals. It was essentially just a rough idea. So I decided that the next stage was to get Abby in to put down some trial vocals just to check that her voice would work over the track, and just so that she gained familiarity with the track, etc. So these were the test vocals that we put down. Looking for my baby, need to feel your touch. Want somebody to save me from this road. You can tell that it's recorded on an SM57. It just doesn't have much depth to it, so I knew I was going to need to re-record it. But it gave me a good starting point, and actually you can see here where she did one of these. I'm waiting for you to come home. I repeated it there. Just cut it up and repeated it in the structuring process, because I only really started to structure the song after the vocals had been done, so that I knew where they were going in the drop / in the build up, etc. So once I'd done that, I kind of started to fill in different bits around the track, like deciding where the drums were going to go. I added a bass in this build up here. I mean, originally this bass had a lot of kind of mid information, but I took it all out. because I really want that like gritty high end of it. I also forgot to say this pad has the Atmosphere has a lot of reverb on it, so that it gives it a lot of space. But anyway, I added that bass there. I also added these basses here to go under the chords. Again, very ominous. I wanted it to kind of sit underneath everything else. So my next stage of the track making process was actually doing the main vocals. We went into Studio 3 for this, and I put Abby in the vocal booth so that I could have more control of the vocal reverb in post-production process. But I used a valve mic. My original plan was to use the FET 47, but first off it was being used, and secondly I'd used it on Abby's voice before and it just didn't work. There was too much frequencies between 6 and 7k, so I decided to use a valve mic, and it did work. I think it sounded a lot better. So we came in on the 18th of March, and I came in about 30 minutes before, set everything up, made sure that the desk was working, and essentially just got ready for her. She came in, and I'd already sent her the balances before of the track, so she'd gained familiarity with it, and I got her to sing in sections each thing, and you can hear there's a lot more body in the recording. Won't somebody save me from this road all this time? There's a lot more warmth there. So we recorded each bit in sections, and basically just went through after that, and just, as you can see here, I just comped the best of each takes. Coincidentally, this one just happened to be most of the same take. And we went through and comped all of the main parts, and once we had done that, we then added harmonies. She was very much looking for creative direction, I think, when she was doing the harmonies, but my plan was to just try and let her do whatever she wanted, because I think harmonies are very personal to the singer. So the first few takes on all of the tracks were a bit they didn't have much energy, but as soon as I let her kind of do her own thing, the harmonies ended up being a lot more they worked a lot better. Like, so these are the harmonies leading into the first drop, as it were. Waiting for you to come home. You can hear the reverb on those, just giving it a bit of space. The harmonies, I've actually got like this low pass filter on, just making it slightly less harsh, so that main vocal is taking most of the space. And then I had this extra bit that I added in the drop, which is just her voice sampled, and I've pitched it down to make like almost a chord. It just adds a little bit on the top. So we've got then the bass. I added some tambourine here. vocal. And then I also added these effects, just rises and impacts, to make a little bit more impact in the drops. So the next stage in this process was to record drums. There's a picture below showing the mics that I used, but when I went into the studio to record, I wanted to make a very kind of jungly sound, specifically by using a piccolo snare to make it sound a slightly more pitched up. So I used this piccolo snare, and I measured that the overheads were equidistant from the snare, so that I didn't get any phase issues. And you can see here the cowbell that I used as a metronome. So this is the, if I can try and get the dry sound as much as I can at least. Essentially, I decided not to use the high tom, low tom and hi-hat in the end, because they were just adding frequencies that didn't need to be there. So this is the dry. I mean, already it sounds pretty good, but once I added all of the, let me go on to this actually. Once I added all of the effects back on, it cleans it up a little bit, and you can get that more aggressive sound that I needed to cut through the rest of the track. Some compressors and a lot of EQs there, as you can see, just cleaning up the top of the track, because the snare was quite aggressive, so I took some of the high end off, etc. So this is the drums. You can hear that room mic coming through there. Providing some of that space, and then additionally I have this track, which is basically just these balanced out. Actually, the whole of the drum tracks there balanced out and distorted very heavily. There you go. Similar to what I did in the track, the other track. All that's doing is just providing a bit of extra low end to the drums, and if you listen to it with the rest of the track, it blends in a bit more. So as you can hear, this this vocal here is actually taken from the second drop, but I've put this space plugin on, which is essentially just doing a flanger. It's also got like a room reverb on it, and it's just underneath, providing a bit of interest because I felt it was a bit empty there. And then this new vocal comes in here, which leads us into the post first drop.
Waiting for you to be in my arms once more, once more. So I'll leave the door open and the fire burning low.
As you can, when I showed you Iggy's track, I actually cut all of the silences so that it was a bit neater, but with Abby's voice I felt like it was necessary to keep some of the silences, as there was some quieter like breaths before singing that I felt added to the kind of natural voice that she has, so I kept those in, and obviously I faded some of them in there as well. And then as we move into the last drop, or the second drop, it's pretty similar to the first. The only difference is that we've got this new, more ethereal sounding pad there. And the vocal from the first drop, which had a flanger on, is now clear. And the drums as well. Let me just unsolo everything. I should also note that this is I went into the studio after having trialled Abby's voice and just was messing around with some different techniques and decided to put a little marching snare drum in. I'd actually forgotten to use the right box in the studio because I was recording these snares in the vocal booth, but I ended up using a mic in the main room by accident, but it makes this like roomy, really nice sound. And but I felt like I was kind of losing some of the rhythm because it was such a roomy sound. As you can hear, it's not really popping out of the track much, so I decided to add this tremolo, and it kind of gives it a much more rhythm. And then that is layered with the drums in the drop as well. And then leading out of the second drop, when recording the drums, I felt like it needed to let go a little bit and move away from the Amen break, so I did a little solo-y section, more virtuosic, just to kind of round it off. This was the track that I was filming, so and this take was I needed to use it in full because when filming I couldn't cut the different takes because the it needed to be the same throughout, to keep it like consistent with the video, if that makes sense. So there were better takes of this outro section. So in hindsight, I should have gone back at a different day and tried to do a few more takes of the whole thing to try and get it slightly more polished. But unfortunately, I just didn't really have time. However, I made a new group. Actually, I don't need this group here, but I made a new group for the drums. Which is just providing some different kind of processing for the solo, as it doesn't need so much grit. I also have this drum track which is the same thing. It's like the whole thing bounced out, but I've just got a lot of phasers on it. It's in the the build-ups and the outros / intros. It sounds quite silly, but it kind of fits in with the rest of the track here.
Waiting for you to come. I'll leave the door open and the fire burning low.
On a lot of the tracks here, I have a bus that is just providing like a room sound that just ties the whole track together, and yeah. So this was the track that I was filming. I wanted to film it to show how social media has impacted like the Amen break, and how like artists like Richard Holtzman make their videos, and I have gained a greater appreciation for them since making this track. However, having said this, I think the video that comes out at the end does engage the listener more than it would just the track, so I think it is worth it. And yeah, this is the track.